Emu does not have a devil fruit. That's right. You heard me. At least not in the way that we know about them. But what Emu does have is the original fruit-based power, known as the Devil's Fruit. You see, the way this is worded implies that there has only ever been one of these, and with just how long Emu has been around, he could very well be the original holder of it, or at the very least, has had it in his possession for a very long time. So by now you might be wondering what exactly makes it different. And we will get into this later in the video, but first, let us set the stage. The key difference lies in its origin. This is because it is the only fruit-based power that was not born from or created by humans. Instead, the fruit was placed on Blue Planet by the devil themselves. And possibly even what we have been told is the Sea Devil by Shanks in Chapter 19. And from it came forth all the devil fruits we know today. But perhaps not in the way you might expect. Before that, let's examine some of the clues that hint towards this. Starting with a review of the fruit's abilities. You see, the more I started to look at some of Emu's powers, the more I started to notice that they are somewhat indicative of the 3 different devil fruit types that we know today. With the transformation abilities being like that of zone fruits, the intangibility and regeneration being like that of Logia fruits, and the ability to manifest objects such as the magic book or the gun used against Bragi being similar to Paramecia fruits. In fact, if we look at things like Domi Reversi and the Covenant Seals, or the trees and houses in the latest chapter, its ability to affect its surroundings in various ways screams awakening. The takeaway here is that Emu's Devil's Fruit displays facets of all 3 fruit types, but to a degree that can be viewed as even going beyond them. So we will connect this to the Devil Fruits, but first let's touch on why he is struggling with leaving the Holy Land. We have all heard the phrase, make a deal with the devil, or sell your soul to the devil, and this is exactly what Emu has done. Ever since Egghead, I have believed that devil fruits as we know are somehow rooted in the combination of science and human desire. But in the case with Emu, I think it is something more primordial, maybe even akin to like black magic. As we mentioned earlier, the sea might be important here as well. Especially if we work under the assumption that this all started with the Sea Devil. We can be fairly certain that prior to the Void Century, the land masses of Blue Planet were more connected, and that the ocean itself was less prevalent. One might even say the world was connected in one piece. With this, let's assume that for some reason the Sea Devil wanted to change this, perhaps expand their domain, or even Emu wanted to expand this and needed the power to do so. So we could say the devil needed a vessel to act through, or Emu desired to become the vessel for the devil to act through. And so, said vessel goes by the name of Saint Emu Neurona. Basically, Emu made a deal with the Sea Devil that in exchange for power and even longevity, he would facilitate the flooding of the world. And as part of that deal, he would also have to remain as far away from the sea as possible, effectively restricting him to the top of the red line, because the only place higher than that is the moon. So alongside being directly weak to the ocean like traditional Devil Fruit users, Emu is also weakened by proximity, because he would be breaking that pact. Save this perhaps as a trade-off for power and longevity, he was forced to remain restricted in the area of the Holy Land itself, like as if it is a boundary he is not meant to cross. So I believe it is highly likely that he is not at full power here on Elbaf. As just kind of a side note there. And with this, let's connect back to how this spawned devil fruits. But before we do so, if you like this video, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, hit the bell icon, and maybe even leave some comments. All of these things are tremendously important for small channels, but even setting that aside, it's something that I would greatly appreciate. Vegapunk taught us, or at least hypothesized, on two important aspects of devil fruits. One is that they were created from the desire of humans, and two is that they function by acting upon the lineage factor of the one who consumes them. This is the combination of human imagination and desire and scientific advancements that led to the creation of the devil fruits. But not only that, they were created in response to the potential threat of the devil's fruit held by Imu. It is highly likely that they were created prior to the Void Century during the large-scale war that led up to it, with the first type of devil fruit created being mythical zones. When we look at mythical zones, we can already see that they somewhat break the standard structure and that they have a typical transformation like normal zones, but they can also grant either Paramecia or Logia type special abilities, be it through additional transformations and craziness, like what Luffy can do, or elemental control / powers like what Loki can do. In general, they are the devil fruit type that comes closest to Imu's devil's fruit, especially Luffy's Nika fruit. So, it is likely that things like the Nika fruit, the Nidhogg fruit, and even the Phoenix and Buddha fruits are the ones that came first. Like, they are kind of the progenitors of what we see today. Then, over time, the fruits branched out into the three types that we see today, making Imu's power even more of the progenitor of devil fruits, despite being entirely different, right? It was almost more like the impetus for what led humanity down the path of creating the devil fruits. Almost in that because Imu's devil's fruit was brought into being, it changed the way things work, so that then follow-ups could be made. But because these are copies, or one could say rip-offs, of the Sea Devil's original power, this might also explain why they're hated by the ocean and remove the ability to swim. While we are here, let's touch a bit on how these powers change people with a focus on what Imu can do. Circling a little bit back, let us review the means in which all fruit powers are acting on the individuals of the One Piece world, the Lineage Factor, and how this might allow us to do things such as liberate Imu's covenant holders, kind of like how we can do with Domi Reversi. And again, I think it all comes down to the Lineage Factor. We can pretty much view this as the DNA of the One Piece world, the blueprint of life, if you will. So for this part of the video, we will refer to them as genes. We can assume that the genes being affected are different for each type of devil fruit. This is because while Vegapunk can near perfectly replicate zones, and he can somewhat replicate Paramecias, he cannot at all replicate Logias. What this tells me is that he was able to isolate the genes being changed for the first two, but was unable to isolate the gene being changed for the last one. We also know through comparing the Seraphim and Green Blood and their Paramecia abilities with Momonosuke that the alterations are not all permanent, right? As with the Seraphim, additional green blood is needed to maintain using the Devil Fruit power, while Momonosuke is just a dragon. Like, he just has the same power as Kaido, and he does not need to do anything else outside of the one time eating the fruit to achieve that. While this does not directly relate to Imu per se, I think it might give us hints towards liberating those under Imu's control. And we're going to come back to that one. You know, while I believe the source of Imu's powers to be different, I kind of think the way it's implemented is the same. I think it is likely that in Emu's case, all 3 or all X number of the above genes have been altered, to the extent that his powers show facets of all 3 devil fruit types. And so this right here kind of hints towards the potential of how we're both able to free individuals from Domi Reversi, but possibly how we might even be able to free Covenant holders as well. We know that freedom is a big theme in One Piece, and it presents itself in many ways. Through Luffy's dream, which we don't totally know what that is yet, through inherited will, and on the other end of the spectrum, through the oppression brought to the world by Emu. So I think it is fair to discuss the potential of freeing even those directly under him. Of course, you might be wondering, are any of the God's Knights or the Gorosei even worth saving? And to answer that, we should start by looking at Gunko. From the small interactions we have got with her and Brook, we can infer that she never really wanted to go this route to begin with. Serving Emu was probably not her choice. Killing her father was certainly not her choice. Or, if it was, in some way, she was initially swayed, somewhat like Harald, right, with the wool pulled over her eyes. In any case, it is clear that she was controlled by Emu and probably is not a bad person to begin with, which makes her the perfect candidate for this. We see with Domi Reversi that there are more than one ways of changing a person back, either by dealing lethal damage or whatever it is Chopper is doing. And if you want to learn more on what I think might be going on with that, check out my video somewhere up here, and I'll probably leave a link in the description as well. In short, I think it has something to do with his Rumble Ball. So we can compare this to the Green Blood, in that the effects of Domi Reversi, probably acting upon the person's lineage factor, are more temporary, right? Now, it becomes harder with the Covenant holders, as once they sign a deal with Emu, their own form of signing the deal with the devil, it's likely a more permanent alteration or change to their lineage factor. It's more fundamental, not unlike what a devil fruit does. But I still think it's going to be possible either through Chopper, Luffy as the Warrior of Liberation, or both. I think it's likely that one or both of them just might find a way to undo the Covenant and even undo the changes to their lineage factor, bringing the individual back to normal. Again, this could serve as a great example of both the Warrior of Liberation and even Chopper's dream to cure every disease. Perhaps Chopper has a way of isolating and altering the lineage factor that would even allow him to surpass Vegapunk. Like, I kind of see, in terms of the Straw Hats, I see Frankie and Chopper surpassing Vegapunk in different facets. I just think that would be really fitting for the end of the story. For Chopper, this would be through both his studies as a doctor and his work with the Rumble Ball. And you know what? For those who are unworthy or have no desire to be liberated, I'm looking at you, Saint Sommers. Well, perhaps we let Zoro cut right on through their hearts of steel. And so that's the video. I wanted to, try my hand at another kind of theory type video. I'm actually pretty new to coming up with theories, so it's a little harder to put things together. I don't have as much to go off of. But if you enjoyed this, please let me know. Definitely leave comments in the down below. I really would love to have more discussions, and who knows, maybe that would even fuel more thoughts and videos in the future. And with that, I would like each and every one of you to have an excellent rest of your day.